Hi, and welcome to the Tea with Intuitives podcast. I'm Brittany, an esoteric healer and spiritual life coach.
And I'm Meli, an Akashic reader, past life psychic, and channeling coach. Each episode, we answer one of your questions about spirituality, the Akashic records, energy healing, meditation, spirit guides, and the unseen world.
So we invite you to grab your cup of tea while we share ghost and ET stories from our listeners. But first, Meli, what tea are you drinking today?
Well, Brittany, I am drinking my super mix for the third eye. So it's a blend of mint and lavender.
Yum.
What about you?
I have a creamy Earl Grey that I got in Barcelona, and it's super good. I actually don't have oat milk in it, and it still tastes like the creamy vanilla flavor to it. It's amazing. Yeah.
I like how you are country dropping.
Well, it was funny when we went to Europe, I didn't expect to bring home tea, but then I kept finding all this tea I wanted to try.
Yeah, and it's
So
perfect for luggages. Like it's so light. It's not heavy.
Yes, true. And it makes good gifts.
Yes.
Yay. Well, I can share. I received a couple of stories that are very Halloweeny. This is someone who reached out on Instagram, or I actually reached out to them because I knew they would have a good story for this podcast. So, her name is Bree. She wrote to us two stories. One was a ghost story from her childhood, and one is an ET story from her early 20s. Okay, so this story comes from when she was 15, and one night while she was laying in bed, she had this porcelain heart box that fell off the dresser and broke into a lot of pieces. So she put the box back together and put it back on her dresser. 5 minutes later, the box was thrown off the dresser again, and the pieces broke again. So after having that experience of the movement, she always slept with the light on. And it's kind of sad to think about because you'd hope when these experiences happen, you would have a resource or someone to talk to, like an energy healer or a reader to kind of help navigate. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of sad to think about this teenager alone in her room, sleeping with the light on. But she says also in that same house, she would have her bedroom door swing open, and she would hear footsteps down the hallway leading to her room. The TV would turn on and off, and she would feel something sitting at the bottom of her bed. She said this happened for 4 years until she was 19, where she felt this spirit messing with her in the house, but finally she moved out. And I do think there are certain places and homes and areas that do have spirits, and there are spirits that like to interact with us. They're probably very lonely. And this person I know specifically is very sensitive and very psychic. So once they kind of figure out you know they're there, they'll start messing with you more. That's kind of my theory. Mm-hmm. My guess is it was the house she lived in was probably just had an earthbound and needed some clearing. But yeah, that's like a super spooky thing to happen. It's definitely gives you like goosebumps.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm wondering, like, she was seeing all of these things, but what about the other people in the household? Was she the only person witnessing? Because she said
From what I know of her, I think she grew up being very sensitive compared to her family.
Yeah.
And I also remember her saying to me, like having stuff happen to her and then not knowing what to do about it. So I don't think she received help. Mm-hmm. Right. So.
Right. Well, if it can reassure some listeners, you can have mischievous spirits. You can have spirits that are caught stuck in our dimension because they are too scared to go to the light or they regret things they have done. But you can also have protector spirits. And I have one protecting my house. And you can also have both, by the way, because I used to have a mischievous spirit in the house not that long ago. And like it wasn't super active. It was in a certain room in my basement. And I always had doubts, but never acknowledged it because it was a bit scary to me. And then I had a friend who came and visited me, and she's psychic as well, and she's more in tune with houses. And she was like, yeah, there's something in that room. Yeah, there's something. There's something not right. I was like, oh no, damn it. And then another person confirmed it to me, and I'm like, okay, I just cannot ignore that anymore. And it wasn't much. Like we had pipe problems in the pipes around that area. We also, like, once the radio alarm started beeping, but it wasn't programmed or anything. The regular radio started playing, but this would happen in like 2 years, nothing. But there was always this kind of weird feel. And so I'm talking to a psychic who's giving me advice on this. And they're like, yeah, you really have to be strong there and tell it to go away. And you have to show that you need to leave. And so kind of, oh my God, what's going on? So I take my sage stick and I go, okay, so yeah, I'm saging the whole house and you are going away. I'm alone at the house. I would be bit embarrassed to do it in front of my husband and my daughter. And I'm like, you need to leave. So I start in that room. It was a guest room downstairs. And I start in that room and I do the whole basement and I go up and I do each room. Like I'm used to saging and how it works. And now I'm adding like, you are not welcome here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm harsh. And then I go to the entryway, and the entryway is very narrow where I live. And there's also a smoke detector over there. And I never thought about it. I'm saging the whole house. Like it's taking a long time. It's just like, oh, some sage here and there. And so I'm screaming at the spirit, and the fire alarm is takes off, and I'm like, oh my God, and the sound, and I'm panicking, and I'm just opening the door so the spirit gets out and closing the door. And I don't want to scream while I have the door open because I don't want the neighbors to think I'm crazy. And my cat keeps staring from the middle of the afternoon during the whole night. My cat is staring at that place in the entryway. And I'm like, oh no, the spirit is still there. So I'm calling my friend who's a psychic. And she's like, yeah, it's there. And so I'm explaining what I did. And she was like, how do you, okay, picture the spirit. How is the spirit feeling? And I'm like, well, actually, I can see the spirit now that I think of it and that my emotions are calmer. And I didn't need to have that attitude while I was saging. What happened is that the spirit didn't want to be malevolent. It just didn't know what to do in our house and wanted attention from time to time. And when I started, really kind of talk to that spirit in that way, like she was grounded in a way. She went like, oh my God, what's happening? Because in the house, I'm always like very calm. We never scream at each other. It's not much sound. And I could see the spirit going like, oh my God, what am I doing? What's going on? And the spirit didn't have the chance to leave the house because it couldn't understand how to go to the light properly, which I was just saying, go to the light, but it wasn't clear enough for the spirit. And so I did a second ceremony, no sage, just talked really calmly to the spirit saying, I'm sorry, I didn't go at this the right way. It was my first time. So, thank you for being here, but you are honestly not wanted, because where you need to go is go to the light. And then I can explain to the spirit, okay, you're going to see the light there. I'm going to open the door. You're going to see it. You're going to feel free. Your people, your soul family is waiting for you. And I opened the door and I felt like whoosh. And my cat stopped staring at that space. So it was gone.
That's such a great story. I feel like there's so much out there about like, have a strong boundary, show who's in charge, and declare your space. I also would like to share that I don't think those things are bad to do. I think they're important, but the spirits are just like us. Like they're still very human. They're still in a very human frequency. So I wouldn't respond very well to yelling. I don't right now. I probably wouldn't respond very well,
Yeah.
when I pass over. But that's just what some of us are taught because that's all we know. And we're also taught that like force is how to get things done a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
Um, if you're wanting to clear your house but you don't have sage or something, you can also play some like Native American drumming. So if you can YouTube this or go to Spotify, but anything that's like super deep drumming, really rich kind of sounds, deeper, lower frequency too can help really clear houses.
Mhm.
It can also help clear you. So don't feel like you don't have the tools. If you have a cell phone, you can clear your house with that frequency. So try it out and see how it feels.
Yeah. Okay, so do we
Okay.
have a second story?
There is a second story from Bree, and the second story is after her first story, and in her 20s, she used to come home from work around 10 p.m. and drive down this long road in Texas. She said it's called the 646. That's the road. She said she started noticing big gold orbs in the sky hovering over the road. She wasn't sure what it was, maybe a drone or like an aircraft or something. Um, And then eventually they started forming these like ships. So instead of looking up and seeing these gold orbs, she started seeing these ships that she would read about. And this wasn't scary. Like when she was younger and a teenager visited by a spirit, that was like more scary for her. But seeing
Mm.
this in the sky was way less scary. And she was just really curious as to what she was seeing. One evening, she was driving down that same road and she felt this sensation. Um, that someone was sitting next to her in the seat. And then shortly after, she noticed this. She said it was a feeling of a big truck swerving out of control towards her. And within seconds, cars, including hers, were moved out of the way.
Whoa.
So she had this feeling there was someone sitting next to her, and then she had this feeling that there was a truck swerving out of control. And then after she had that premonition, what happened was there were cars that just had naturally gotten moved out of the way on the road. I think probably intuition took over and she probably just moved her car, but it might have felt like she wasn't the one doing it. And I think we can relate to that sometimes of like having this intuitive download or this premonition and we do something and it's not necessarily like that forefront part of our brain that's doing it.
Mhm.
Um, and then she saw the truck. Then the truck came and it swerved between the cars and then went off the road.
Whoa.
And if there wasn't this message that told them to move or help them move out of the way, there would have been a huge accident.
Mhm.
So she said there was a moment of protection for everyone involved, and it was like a huge moment of gratitude. Um, she says there's way more stories and they get longer and that she would need more time to send us more stories. And I know Bree, I've known her for a couple of years and she is very closely um she has a close relationship to other beings. It's pretty magnificent.
Mm.
Uh but yeah, that's just one of her first experiences with an ET.
Yeah, yeah. And I also feel when we are in dire situations, when accident happens, there are beings there with us, whether you want to call them, guardian angels or spirit guides, whatever. In her case, because she was on that road and of what she saw, she deduced ETs, but they are protecting us and they are communicating with us. And I've only been in one car accident in my life, and it's a very mild accident. Like the person was driving too fast, and it was in the countryside and roads that aren't lit, that go like S's like this. And he was just driving too fast, and we just hit a pole that was probably saying like drive slowly because of the road. But it was like the car just went, you know, sideways like this, and then bang. And during it happening, I heard something telling me, it's not your time, you're going to be okay. Because I was so stressed, and there was this reassurance all of a sudden, like, you're going to be fine. And I just had a bit of back pain because of the shock, and I was probably something like 16 years old. So, you know, you're young enough that you don't have pain for the rest of your life. It's just a few days like, oh, I don't feel that good. But yeah, I heard something, someone told me, you're okay, it's not your time.
Such great reassurance. Thank you for listening to the Tea with Intuitives podcast.
If you have a question for us, you can send it at teawithintuitives@gmail.com or via Instagram or YouTube.
Your love for this podcast helps us grow and reach more like-minded souls, so don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast.
Have a beautiful week.